Across the UK, on DAB digital radio, on the free Times Radio app, and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.
19 minutes past 5. Well, the Sun has Recall Me Dave. Do you remember that David Cameron said at the time when he was Prime Minister to staff, call me Dave. Well, the reshuffle shock makes the front pages of pretty much all of the papers. The Daily Mail says Rishi's big throw of the dice. The Guardian says Cameron's shock return in the high-stakes reshuffle. And the Eye says Back to the Future. The PM gambles on the return of David Cameron. Andrew Eborn is a barrister, broadcaster, futurist, president of Octopus TV, is on the line now to go through the papers. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie. A joy to join you, as always.
What was your reaction yesterday when it was David Cameron who got out of the car and walked under the door, the threshold of number 10?
Oh, quite extraordinary. I think everybody was expecting Suella to be the lead about her sacking, but Dave, call me Dave, has stolen the spotlight, and he's the first former Prime Minister in more than 50 years. You might recall that the last one was his back. Edward Heath appointed Alec Douglas home as Foreign Secretary all the way back in 1970. Extraordinary move, but one that's certainly going to dictate the headlines. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what he can do, because they've only got about a year to get it all sorted. And if things can be sorted out on a foreign stage, then he will no doubt take a lot of the credit for it.
Well, he talked about, the relationships that he's got and kind of the kudos you have as a former Prime Minister. So how much that will help kind of smooth things overseas for Britain will be really interesting. Of course, David Cameron is a Remainer, so that potentially is problematic for Rishi Sunak and what he wants his government to achieve. Should we move away from politics for a little bit? Because, of course, there is other news and very much your field of expertise, Andrew. AI, front page of the Times. Thousands of lives, so writes the health editor here, could be saved every year by using artificial intelligence, a tool that performs better than doctors in predicting whether patients will have a heart attack. It's quite an incredible study.
It's a lovely, lovely story, and I'm so pleased that it's great news. So basically what they're saying, this AI tool could help prevent 1 in 5 heart attacks. And what is good at doing artificial intelligence is analysing things that are normally missed by the human eye. And we had this fairly recently, for example, with Moorfields, who said that you might be able to predict things like Parkinson's up to 7 years earlier. And prevention is always much better than cure. And what they're saying in this report, about 350,000 people a year in Britain have a cardiac CT scan, which is the standard test to identify narrowing or blockages in the arteries. And what happens is sometimes it gets missed by the human eye because they're not quite sure about deposits that may break up if arteries are inflamed, and this can block them. But the AI tool can change all of this. It can tell you that this is more likely, and therefore people can be put on statins and various other things as a result. So it's a phenomenal progress yet again as a result of AI.
It is quite an incredible story. Front page of the Times, well worth a read with your subscription today. I said that we're going to move away from politics. We're going to come back to it in just a moment, Andrew. But Royal Mail, my goodness. Remember this time last year, we were talking about how to send your parcels and there were so many strikes. Royal Mail's been fined £5.6 million by the competition regulator for failing to meet its first and second class postal delivery targets. And even when you account for strike action, that doesn't explain why, if you send a first class letter, it's not definitely going to arrive the next day.
It's a bit worrying, isn't it? Get your cards out for Christmas today is probably the best advice. But what they're saying is about, in total, about 73.7% of first-class mail was delivered within 1 working day. And their target is 93%, so they're 20% down just about. And only 90.7% of second-class mail was delivered within 3 days. And the target for that is 8.5%. So huge targets. They're failing on that sort of basis. And they're basically saying, look, this should be a wake-up call to Royal Mail. Talk about Christmas deliveries. They say December the 18th is for second class and Wednesday, December the 20th for first class. But as I say, it's probably worth getting in early. We'll see what happens and whether this does buck up their ideas But you need to work out what is the real reason for these delays, because the article doesn't sort of go into that in any detail, and maybe that's what they need to look at, is what has caused this over and above the sort of general problems they've had about weather and various other things they talk about.
Yeah, some of the other problems are things like overnight closures of the runway at Stansted. That was sort of the beginning of this year for resurfacing works and, strikes, weather. I think it was 18 days of strike action this time last year. Andrew, do you use Royal Mail?
Well, isn't it extraordinary? I think there's something special about receiving a letter in the post, isn't there? I mean, the short answer is that everybody emails things, everything's immediate. It's on that sort of premise. So the decline of letters actually increases their importance. People love to get something in the post. I certainly do. What about you?
I love sending letters. I absolutely love it, but I sort of balk at how expensive a stamp is, particularly if you're paying first class. When you order a pack and you think, oh gosh, this is sending me back quite a bit just for 4 first class stamps. And it sounds like first class doesn't actually mean it's going to get there particularly quickly anyway, so you might as well go for second class. I said we'd return to politics because Hugo Rifkind has had fun in the paper today. Don't go ape over a Farage jungle appearance. He said politicians who take the reality TV shilling kid themselves, they'll get a career boost. Happily, it doesn't work like that. Well, Nigel Farage has arrived in Australia. Some papers are reporting that he's been paid well over £1 million for his appearance in the jungle. Should we just hear a little bit how Farage thinks it's going to go?
I've dealt with snakes in the European Parliament. I believe I can cope with this too.
Are you going to be watching, Andrew?
Well, it's compulsive viewing, isn't it? And it is quite extraordinary. Politicians, they always say they want to get down with the real people. They can see them day to day, get to parts of the electorate other politicians can't reach. He's reportedly being paid $1.5 million, according to the Daily Mail. But you might remember people like Edwina Currie, the former cabinet minister. She went in. I think she came about fourth in 2014. You've got Neil Hamilton. He did a lot after losing his seat in 1997. And of course, Matt Hancock is no stranger to
he
the
did
reality
really well
circuit. Yes,
I'm a Celebrity. Nadine Dorris didn't fare as well in the jungle. Would you go in, Andrew?
I'd be tempted. Oh, 1.5 million is very tempting. I could afford some first-class stamps then, couldn't I? That would be good.
Hugo?
It's an interesting experience, isn't it? I mean, George Galloway, famously, people remember him for during his Celebrity Big Brother days in 2006, is when he turned into a cat. I don't even remember that.
Yes, awful. Yes. With Rula Lenska. Yes.
That's the one.
It was unpleasant. Very stressful.
I think people need to be advised that they're being watched all the time, and I think if people brief them basically about what it might do for their career, that's great. Showing people you're human and you've got a vulnerable side is always good. Humiliating yourself is probably not so good.
Hugo really did make me laugh. He said, what if long ago Suella Braverman had dreamt of dancing on ice? Wouldn't that have been better for everyone? Talking about politicians and their potential reality TV prospects. Well, she'll have much more time on her hands now.
Right.
Andrew, if you were going into the jungle and you're excited about it, the best thing you could do would be hold the news to yourself. Inside the Times, the science reporter Kaya Burgess is reporting on this study that says keeping good news a secret is actually good for you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So keeping this great stuff inside, as you know, I'm a member of the Magic Circle, and one of our founding tenets is that we basically do not reveal our secrets. And it's a thrill. They've now done these researchers at Columbia University in New York, and they've assessed. They do a little experiment to see if it's good for your mental health. And apparently, keeping good news in for a little bit longer is really good. Keeping bad news in is not so good. So I think it's, they all say a problem shared is a problem halved. So that's probably for bad news. But for good news, it makes you feel energized and invigorated if you can keep it to yourself for a little bit longer.
Yeah, some of these things you can't really keep secret. Things like being pregnant. Getting engaged. I mean, you can keep it secret for a little bit, but not for that long. I think those things will become fairly apparent quite quickly.
Absolutely.
Final thing, Andrew, the kind of local press has really enjoyed, and I know that you got the opportunity yesterday to meet someone who's been awarded for incredible kindness in the pandemic.
Oh, it's a wonderful chap called Sebbie Hall, who I met in a TV studio not a million miles away last year. He's 20, and he had a statue of himself wearing a cape and posing in a heroic stance, unveiled down at Tower Bridge in London. And he's basically been doing an act of kindness every day during COVID pandemic. He's since gone on to support more than 450 families. He's got the Sebbie Hall Kindness Foundation, which is basically helping vulnerable youngsters, and donated tens of thousands of pounds. And I was down there with him and his family, took them out for lunch yesterday, and spent a glorious morning celebrating Sebbie Hall. And he says that basically kindness is his superpower. He's got challenges in his own life, but spreading happiness, spreading those wonderful random acts of kindness is such a joy.
Brilliant. Andrew, thank you so much. It's been great to have you go through the papers this morning. Andrew Eborn, barrister, broadcaster, futurist and president of Octopus TV. Really appreciate your time.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.